The great hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched for miles in every direction. Lights from 1,000 stars shone through the crystal ceiling, and representatives from 12 different species sat in their elevated seats, looking down at the small platform in the center. On that platform stood a single human woman. Captain Park was not tall. She was not physically impressive by any galactic standard. The delegates towered over most species at nearly 3 meters tall. They had 4 arms and skin like living metal. They who sat in the highest seats reserved for the most powerful empire had bodies built for war, thick scales, clawed hands, and teeth designed to tear through flesh. Had none of these things. She had soft skin, dull teeth, and a body that would break easily under pressure. She stood before these powerful species wearing a simple gray uniform, her black hair pulled back from her face, her hands clasped behind her back. The ambassador leaned forward in his seat. His name was difficult for human tongues, so the translation systems called him simply the Voice. He had led the invasion of Earth 3 months ago. He had expected to harvest a primitive species for labor and resources. Instead, his fleet had limped home with barely a third of its ships remaining. "You asked to speak before this assembly," the Voice said, his words dripping with contempt. "We have granted your request, though I cannot imagine what a species as young as yours could possibly have to say." Did not react to the insult. She had heard worse during the invasion. She had watched her cities burn. She had buried her younger brother after a bombing raid destroyed his school. She had held her mother's hand as she died from injuries sustained during the attack on Seoul. She felt the weight of 10 billion human souls behind her, the living and the dead, the children who would never grow up, the futures that had been stolen. "I thank the Assembly for this opportunity," said. Her voice was calm and clear, carrying easily through the vast chamber. "I will not take much of your time. I have only one thing to say, and I want every species here to remember it." She paused and looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each delegation. The looked bored, the seemed curious. The other species showed various levels of disinterest. To them, humanity was a footnote, a minor species that had somehow survived its first contact with a real power. "3 months ago," continued, "the Dominion came to our world. They came without warning. They came without negotiation. They came to take our people as slaves and our planet as a resource." The Voice made a dismissive gesture. "This is ancient history. Your species defended itself adequately. We have moved on to other matters." "I have not finished," said, and something in her tone made even the Voice pause. "They expected to find a primitive species. They expected easy prey. They found something else." She took a step forward, and though she was small, something about her presence seemed to fill the entire chamber. "We lost millions of lives in your invasion. Our cities burned. Our children died. You thought this would break us. You were wrong. While your soldiers celebrated their early victories, our scientists studied your weapons. Our engineers learned your technology. Our soldiers adapted to your tactics. In 3 months, we went from being your victims to being your nightmare." A murmur ran through the assembly. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "We did not simply survive," said. "We learned, we adapted, we overcame. And we did this faster than any species in galactic history has ever done." The Voice laughed, but it sounded hollow. "One lucky victory does not make you a threat." Smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. "You are correct. One victory means nothing. But let me tell you what that victory taught us. It taught us that the galaxy is not a place of peace and cooperation. It is a place where the strong take from the weak. It taught us that no one will protect us except ourselves. And most importantly, it taught us that we can learn to be strong." She turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly now. "I stand before you today not to ask for justice. I am not here to demand reparations. I am not here to beg for protection. I am here to deliver a message, a warning, that I want every species in this galaxy to hear and remember." The chamber fell completely silent. Humanity does not conquer, said. We do not seek empire. We do not wish to expand through war. We want only to live in peace, to raise our children, to explore the stars, and to build a good future. We will be your friends, your trading partners, your allies against common threats. Her voice hardened like steel cooling in water. But if you come for us, if you threaten our children, our homes, our future, we will end you, not defeat you, not push you back, end you. We will study your weapons and build better ones. We will learn your tactics and create counters for them. We will find your weaknesses and exploit them without mercy. She pointed directly at the voice. You came to our world expecting prey. You found predators in disguise, and you saw only a fraction of what we can become when we are truly motivated. You hurt us. You killed our families. You burned our cities. And in doing so, you woke something in humanity that had been sleeping for a very long time. Lowered her hand. This is not a threat. This is a promise. And unlike other species, humans keep their promises. We remember, we plan, we prepare. And when the time comes, we act. Consider this your only warning. There will not be another. She began to walk toward the exit, then stopped and looked back at the assembly one final time. 300 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, it does not matter. If any species comes for humanity again, they will learn what they learned. They will learn that we are patient, we are vengeful, and we never forget. The voice stood from his seat. These are the words of a weak species trying to sound strong. The galaxy will forget your little speech before the day is done. Smiled that cold smile again. Remember this moment, she said. Remember exactly how you feel right now, confident, amused, certain of your superiority. Remember it well, because one day your descendants will look back at this moment and wish with all their hearts that you had listened. She walked out of the chamber, leaving silence behind her. The assembly did forget her words, just as the voice had predicted. They returned to their politics and their wars and their petty squabbles, dismissing humanity as a minor species that had gotten lucky once. They would have 300 years to enjoy their confidence. And then they would remember. Copy published Part 2, The Forgotten Promise. 300 years had passed since Park delivered her warning to the Galactic Assembly. 300 years of silence. 300 years of peace. Humanity had retreated to its small corner of the galaxy. They built their colonies on distant moons and asteroids. They traded quietly with neighboring species. They caused no trouble, started no wars, and made no demands. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth became a forgotten backwater, a planet of short-lived, emotional creatures who had somehow survived their first alien contact through sheer luck. Lieutenant stood on the observation deck of the research vessel Horizon's Edge, watching the stars drift slowly past. He was 28 years old, with kind eyes and an easy smile that made everyone around him feel comfortable. He had joined the research fleet because he believed humanity's future lay in exploration and cooperation, not in hiding from the galaxy. "You are thinking too hard again," said a voice behind him. Turned to see Doctor walking toward him. She was 10 years older than him, with gray already touching her temples and a permanent look of curiosity in her eyes. She had spent her entire career studying alien species, trying to understand them, trying to build bridges between worlds. "I was thinking about the isolationist policies," admitted. "We have so much to offer the galaxy. Why do we hide away like frightened animals?" Joined him at the observation window. "Because the galaxy is not ready for us, and perhaps we are not ready for it." That was 300 years ago. Surely things have changed. Smiled sadly. "Have they? The collective has absorbed 17 species in the last century alone. The still practice ritual combat to determine leadership. The galaxy is still a place where the strong take from the weak." Shook his head. "Not everywhere there are species that want peace. There are." An alarm cut through his words. Red lights flashed across the observation deck, and the ship's computer announced an incoming priority transmission. Captain O's voice came over the speakers. All senior staff to the bridge, immediately. And exchanged worried looks and ran for the bridge. When they arrived, they found the captain standing before the main display screen, her face pale. "What is it?" asked. Did not answer, she simply pointed at the screen. The transmission was military in origin, broadcast on all frequencies by the collective. A creature appeared on the screen, tall, armored in black, with 6 eyes that gleamed with cold intelligence. Recognized the species. They had absorbed the Dominion 2 centuries ago, adding their strength to an empire that already spanned hundreds of worlds. "To all species of the Galactic Assembly," the creature spoke, its voice translated into perfect human language. "The collective has determined that the species known as humanity represents a resource inefficiency. Your small territory occupies strategic positions that could be better utilized by the collective. Your population represents potential labor that is currently wasted on primitive pursuits." Felt his blood turn cold. "Therefore," they continued, "the collective has declared humanity eligible for integration. Your species will be absorbed into the collective. Your worlds will become territory. Your people will serve the greater purpose of our empire. Resistance is mathematically futile. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. Your visible defense force consists of approximately 300 vessels. The outcome is predetermined." The creature paused, and something like amusement crossed its alien features. "We are aware of the warning delivered by your representative 300 years ago. We found it entertaining. A species that had barely survived one invasion threatening the entire galaxy. The arrogance was amusing. But we do not underestimate our prey. We have studied your defenses for decades. We know your strength, your weaknesses, your capabilities. You have no surprises left." The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke, had tears running down her face. Several crew members looked like they might be sick, gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. "How long?" asked quietly. "How long until they reach human space?" "Check the tactical display. Based on their fleet's position, 3 weeks, maybe 4. We need to warn Earth." "I already sent the message," said. "But we both know the truth. 300 ships against thousands. We cannot win this fight." Turned back to the observation window. Somewhere out there, a fleet of thousands was preparing to destroy everything he had ever loved. His parents on Earth, his sister on the Mars colony, his niece who had just started school. "The isolationists were right," whispered. "The galaxy never changed. They were just waiting for the right moment." Thought about Park's warning, preserved in every history class on Earth. He thought about her cold smile and her promise of vengeance. He thought about 300 years of silence. And then he thought about something else, something that did not quite fit. 300 ships, he said slowly. Looked at him, what? They said our visible defense force consists of 300 ships. Turned to face his captain. Visible, they said visible. Frowned, what are you suggesting? Before could answer, the ship shuddered. Alarms screamed again. On the tactical display, a scout vessel had appeared, weapons hot and targeting the horizon's edge. They found us, said. All hands battle stations, not that it will matter. Watched the scout ship approach. It was 3 times the size of their research vessel, bristling with weapons. They had no chance of survival. But he felt something strange in his chest. Not fear, not despair, something else entirely. Hope. Captain, he said, I request permission to send one final transmission. Looked at him like he had lost his mind. To whom, Earth already knows. Not to Earth, to them. He pointed at the ship. I want them to hear something before they kill us. Hesitated, then nodded. Make it quick. Stepped forward and activated the communications array. The ship would hear every word. This is Lieutenant of the human research vessel Horizon's Edge. I know you are going to destroy us. I accept that. But before you do, I want you to know something." He took a deep breath. 300 years ago, a woman named Park stood before the Galactic Assembly and delivered a warning. She said that humanity remembers, that we prepare, that we plan for generations. Your masters dismissed her words as the desperate threats of a weak species. The ship was almost in weapons range. But I know something you do not know. I know that humanity has been waiting for this day. I do not know what we have built. I do not know what weapons we have hidden. But I know one thing with absolute certainty. He smiled, and in that moment, he looked exactly like Park had looked 3 centuries before. "You should have listened." The ship fired. The horizon's edge exploded in a ball of light. But the message was already traveling toward Earth, carrying with it the last words of a young man who believed in his species even as he died. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, something ancient and terrible began to wake. The message from the horizon's edge reached Earth 7 hours after the ship was destroyed. By the time Admiral finished watching Lieutenant's final transmission, she had already given the orders that would change the galaxy forever. Was 73 years old. Her hair was completely white, her face lined with decades of worry and planning. She had served in the United Earth Defense Council for 50 years, and her grandmother had served under Park herself. 3 generations of her family had dedicated their lives to one single purpose: preparation. She stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface of the moon. Around her, hundreds of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Screens covered every wall, showing fleet positions, weapon status, and troop movements across a dozen star systems. "The fleet will enter human space in 19 days, reported Commander No, her second in command. He was a large man with gentle eyes that hid a mind built for war. "Their advanced scouts have already begun probing our outer defenses." "Let them probe," said calmly. "Let them see exactly what they expect to see." Nodded. "The visible fleet is in position. 312 ships just as they anticipated. The crews understand their role." "And the rest?" His lips curved into something that was almost a smile. "Awaiting your command." Turned to face her officers. These were the best humanity had to offer, men and women who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. They knew the truth. They knew what lay hidden in the darkness between stars. 300 years ago, said, her voice carrying through the suddenly silent room, my grandmother stood beside Park as she delivered her warning to the galaxy. She told me stories about that day. She told me how the aliens laughed, how they called us primitive, how they were certain we would be forgotten within a generation. She walked slowly between the rows of stations, meeting the eyes of her officers one by one. But Park knew something they did not. She knew that humanity's greatest strength was not our technology. It was not our military power. It was something far more dangerous, our patience, our ability to think in generations rather than years, our willingness to sacrifice today for victory tomorrow. She stopped before the main display, which showed the approaching fleet, thousands of warships, each one bristling with weapons, each one confident in its superiority. For 300 years we have played the role they expected. We built our visible fleet, 300 ships, barely enough to defend our borders. We traded peacefully. We caused no trouble. We let them forget Park's warning. We let them believe we had grown soft and weak in our isolation. Pressed a button on her command console. The display changed. Where before it had shown only the 300 ships of the visible fleet, now it showed something else entirely. Hidden in asteroid fields, buried beneath moons, concealed in the empty spaces between stars. Thousands upon thousands of vessels, each one larger and more powerful than anything they had ever seen. While they watched our visible fleet and laughed, continued, we built this. We called it the contingency. 12 generations of humans dedicated their lives to its construction. Scientists who never lived to see their work completed. Engineers who died knowing they would finish what they started. Soldiers who trained for wars they knew they would never fight. She turned back to her officers. Every human alive today carries genetic modifications that make us faster, stronger, and more resilient than any natural species. Not crude cybernetics, true biological enhancement developed over centuries. Our children are born with reflexes that match any predator species. Our soldiers heal from wounds that would kill any 3 times over. Brought up another display. This one showed weapon schematics, technologies that had been theoretical 3 centuries ago, now perfected and mass-produced. Our weapons do not simply match technology, said. They exceed it by orders of magnitude. We have spent 300 years studying every species in the galaxy. We know their weaknesses. We know their fears. We know exactly how to break them. An officer near the back of the room raised her hand. She was young, barely 30, with the kind of face that still held traces of innocence. Admiral, why did we never use this power? Why did we wait until they attacked? Looked at her with something like sadness. Because Park did not want us to become what we were fighting. She warned the galaxy and then she waited. She gave them 300 years to choose peace. She gave them every chance to leave us alone. She turned back to the main display. They chose war instead, and now they will learn what that choice costs. The young officer nodded slowly, understanding. In 6 hours, announced, I will address the unified governments of Earth. I will tell them what we have built. I will tell them what we are about to do. And then, for the first time in 3 centuries, humanity will show the galaxy what we truly are. She looked at the approaching fleet one more time. Park made a promise on behalf of our species. She said that if anyone came for us again, we would end them, not defeat them, end them. For 300 years, her descendants have worked to ensure that we could keep that promise. Admiral straightened her uniform and lifted her chin. Today, we keep it. 6 hours later, she stood before the cameras that would broadcast her message to every human being alive. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and scientists, farmers and teachers, all of them watched as she spoke. Citizens of Earth, she began, you have heard that the collective has declared war on humanity. You have been told that their fleet numbers in the thousands, while ours numbers only in the hundreds. You have been told that we cannot win. She paused, and a small smile crossed her weathered face. You have been told wrong. Behind her, the display came alive with images of the contingency, the hidden fleet, the secret weapons, the truth that had been kept from everyone except those who needed to know. For 300 years, we have prepared for this moment. Your grandparents built ships they would never fly. Your parents designed weapons they would never fire. They did this so that your children would be safe. They sacrificed their todays so that we could have our tomorrow. She leaned forward. They believe they are coming to conquer a weak, isolated species. They believe they have studied our strength and found it lacking. They are wrong. They studied what we allowed them to see. They prepared for the enemy we pretended to be. They have no idea what is about to happen to them. Her voice hardened. 300 years ago, we promised the galaxy that we would end anyone who came for our children, our homes, our future. They forgot that promise. They dismissed it as the desperate words of a dying species. They were wrong about that too. Admiral looked directly into the camera, and in that moment she looked exactly like her grandmother had described Park looking, cold, certain, and utterly without mercy. We remember, we prepare, we plan, and now finally we act. The wanted a war with humanity, they are about to get one. She stepped back from the podium. May whatever gods they pray to have mercy on them, because we will not. The Armada entered human space expecting easy conquest. 12,000 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. 2 million soldiers, hardened by centuries of warfare against lesser species. Commanders who had never known defeat. They found silence. Supreme Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at empty space where human colonies should have been. The outer planets showed no signs of life. The defense stations floated dead and dark. The human fleet, those pathetic 300 ships, was nowhere to be found. "Report," Vex demanded. His tactical officer's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. "No contact, Supreme Commander. No resistance. The humans appear to have abandoned their territory." "Impossible. Run the scans again." "I have run them 17 times. There is nothing here." Vex felt the first stirring of unease in his chest. He had studied humans for decades. They were emotional creatures, yes, prone to irrational attachment to their homes and families. They should have been here, fighting desperately to protect their worlds. Instead, there was only darkness. "Move the fleet to the 4th planet," he ordered. "That is their largest outer colony. If they are hiding anywhere, it will be there." The armada moved as one, thousands of ships gliding through space toward the distant world. Vex watched through the viewport as they approached. The planet was green and blue, much like Earth itself. Sensors showed cities, infrastructure, all the signs of a thriving colony, but no movement, no ships, no defenses. "Landing teams are ready," the tactical officer reported. "Shall I give the order?" Before Vex could respond, something changed. At first, it looked like the stars themselves were moving. Points of light that had been fixed in the background suddenly began to shift, to grow larger, to take shape. From every direction, above, below, behind, from angles that should have been impossible, ships began to appear. Not hundreds, not thousands. Tens of thousands. And they were enormous. Where warships were measured in hundreds of meters, these vessels stretched for kilometers. Their hulls were black as the void between galaxies, covered in weapons that Vex systems could not even identify. "What?" the tactical officer began. He never finished the sentence. The first wave of human weapons was not something Vex could see. It was not missiles or energy beams or anything his tactical training had prepared him for. It was simply silence. One moment, his fleet's communications network was alive with thousands of signals. The next moment, there was nothing. "We have lost contact with the outer squadrons," someone reported, their voice shaking. "Restore communications," Vex ordered. "I cannot. It is not a jamming signal. The ships are simply gone." On the tactical display, hundreds of vessels winked out of existence. Not destroyed, just gone, as if they had never existed at all. Panic began to spread through the bridge. Commander Han watched the fleet from the bridge of the human flagship Justice of Earth. He was 45 years old, with scars on his hands from years of combat training and eyes that had seen things that would break lesser men. He did not smile at the destruction unfolding before him. There was nothing to celebrate in what was happening. This was not a battle. It was an execution. "Phase 2, he said quietly. The human fleet stopped firing for exactly 3 seconds. In that brief pause, the surviving ships scrambled to reform their lines, to organize some kind of defense. Then the second wave began. This time it was not silent weapons fired from a distance. This time it was personal. Sergeant led her assault team through the corridors of a captured command ship. She moved like water, flowing around corners, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to see threats before they fully formed. Her team followed close behind, 12 soldiers, each one the result of 300 years of genetic perfection. A warrior appeared at the end of the corridor, weapon raised. To a normal human, he would have seemed impossibly fast, his arm moving in a blur as he targeted the invaders. He moved like he was underwater. She was past him before he could fire, her blade opening his throat as she moved. Her team did not even slow down. They had a mission, and nothing would stop them. "Bridge is 2 levels up," she said into her communicator. "We take their command codes, their ships become ours." "Acknowledged," voice responded. "Extraction team is standing by." Kicked open the next door and found herself facing 20 soldiers, all of them armed, all of them ready. She looked at them, these warriors from a species that had conquered hundreds of worlds, that had believed themselves the masters of the galaxy. "You should have listened," she said in perfect. And then she moved. Back on his flagship, Vex watched his empire collapse in real time. Half his fleet was gone. The other half was either captured or fleeing. Human vessels moved through his formations like predators through a herd of prey, picking off ships with casual precision. His personal guard was dead. His command staff was dead. He was alone on the bridge, surrounded by screens showing nothing but destruction. A transmission came through, somehow cutting through the silence that had swallowed all other communications. Commander Han appeared on the screen. His face was calm, almost gentle. "Supreme Commander Vex said, "This is Commander Han of the United Earth Defense Force. I am contacting you to offer terms of surrender." Vex laughed and there was madness in the sound. "Surrender? You have slaughtered us. What could possibly be left to negotiate? Your life, the lives of your surviving soldiers. We can end this now with no more death, or we can continue until every ship in our space is destroyed. The choice is yours." Vex stared at the human on his screen. This small, soft creature, from a species that his people had dismissed as prey, was offering him mercy. "300 years ago," he said slowly, "a human woman delivered a warning. We laughed at her." "Yes," said, "you did. She promised that if we came for your people, you would end us." "Yes, she did." Vex was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he began to laugh again, but this time there was no madness in it, only terrible, bitter understanding. "We were warned," he said. "We were told exactly what would happen, and we came anyway." "Yes," said, and his voice was not cruel, not triumphant, just sad. "You did." Vex closed his 6 eyes. "I will transmit surrender codes to all surviving vessels, but I have one question first." "Ask." How long have you been capable of this?" Considered the question. The contingency reached full operational capacity approximately 150 years ago. We have spent the last century and a half simply improving it. 150 years. For 150 years, humanity could have swept through the galaxy, conquering every species in their path. And instead, they had waited. They had given everyone 150 years to leave them alone. "We really should have listened," Vex whispered. "Yes," Commander Han said quietly, "you really should have." The surrender codes transmitted. The battle ended. And across 1,000 worlds, the collective received word that their undefeatable armada had been destroyed in less than 6 hours. The warning they had forgotten echoed through their minds like a curse. And somewhere 300 years in the past, the ghost of Park smiled. The collective did not survive the war it had started. Within 6 months of their fleet's destruction, the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries simply fell apart. Species that had been conquered and absorbed for generations rose up against their masters. Worlds that had known nothing but rule suddenly found themselves free. And throughout the chaos, humanity did something that no one expected. They helped. Human ships carried food and medicine to worlds devastated by the rebellion. Human engineers helped rebuild infrastructure that they had destroyed. Human diplomats worked to establish peace between species that had been at each other's throats for centuries. The galaxy watched in confusion. They had seen what humanity was capable of. They had witnessed the destruction of the greatest military force in known space in less than a day. They knew that humans could crush any resistance, conquer any world, build an empire that would dwarf anything they had achieved. Instead, humans helped their enemies recover. They asked for nothing in return, They simply helped. No one understood why. President understood. She had studied Park's original speech hundreds of times. She knew exactly what that first warning had meant, not just the threat, but the promise behind it. Was 57 years old, with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen both the best and worst of humanity. She had been elected president 3 years before the invasion, and she had spent those years hoping she would never have to use the powers her position gave her. Now, as she stood before the Galactic Assembly, the same chamber where had delivered her warning 3 centuries before, she hoped she would never have to use them again. The chamber was silent. Representatives from every surviving species sat in their elevated seats, watching the small human woman on the platform below. Unlike when had stood here, no one was laughing. No one was dismissive. No one doubted for a moment that this soft-skinned, short-lived creature could destroy them all if she chose to. Fear filled the chamber like a physical weight. Felt it and her heart ached. "Thank you for allowing me to address this assembly," she began. Her voice was calm and warm, nothing like the steel that had been in its tone. "I know many of you are afraid. I know you watched what happened to thee and wondered if you would be next. I know you lie awake at night, wondering when humanity will turn its weapons on you." She paused, looking around the chamber, meeting frightened eyes. "I am here to answer that question." The silence somehow deepened. 300 years ago, a woman named Park stood where I stand now. She delivered a warning to the galaxy, a promise that if anyone came for humanity, we would end them. She was not bluffing. She was not exaggerating. Every word she spoke was the absolute truth. Took a step forward. But there was something else in her warning, something that I think the galaxy missed. She did not say we would conquer you. She did not say we would rule over you. She said we would end anyone who threatened us. There is a difference. She gestured to the chamber around her. They came for our children, our homes, our future, so we ended them. Not because we wanted to, not because we enjoyed it, but because they gave us no choice. 3 centuries of peace meant nothing to them. Our warning meant nothing to them. They saw us as prey and they acted on that belief. His voice softened. We did not want to kill them. We had hoped, for 300 years we had hoped that our warning would be enough. That we could simply exist in peace, exploring the stars, raising our families, living our lives. We built the contingency because we had to, not because we wanted to use it. She looked at the delegation, the giant warriors who had laughed loudest at its warning. "You are afraid of us, I understand that. We showed you what we can do and it terrifies you. Good. Fear keeps you safe. Fear keeps you from making the same mistake they made." Then her voice changed, becoming gentler still. "But fear is not what we want from you. We do not want your fear, your submission, your tribute. We do not want to rule you or control you or absorb you into some human empire. That is not who we are. That has never been who we are." She spread her hands, showing empty palms. "What we want is what we have always wanted. Peace, friendship, trade, cooperation. We want to explore the wonders of the universe alongside you, not over you. We want our children to grow up in a galaxy where they do not have to fear invasion, and we want your children to have that same safety." The fear in the chamber began to shift just slightly into something else. Confusion, perhaps, hope possibly. "This is Earth's final broadcast to the stars," continued. "Listen carefully because I will not repeat it. We will not explain ourselves again." She straightened her spine and raised her voice. "Humanity remembers every slight. We have records of every species that laughed when Park delivered her warning. We know exactly who said what and we remember. We prepare for every threat. Our intelligence networks span the galaxy and we know what you are doing, what you are building, what you are planning. We keep every promise, whether that promise is destruction or aid." She let those words hang in the air for a moment. "The next species that comes for humanity will not receive a warning. They will receive an ending. but the species that offers us friendship, that trades fairly with us, that respects our right to exist, those species will find no better ally in the galaxy. When your worlds face disaster, we will help you. When your people are hungry, we will feed them. When you are threatened, we will stand beside you. Smiled, and unlike Cold's smile, hers was warm and genuine. We are not your enemies. We never wanted to be. We are simply a species that learned a hard truth very early in our journey to the stars. The universe is dangerous, and no one will protect you except yourself. We became what we had to become to survive, but survival was never our goal, only our necessity. She turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly one final time. Our goal, our true goal, has always been something simpler. We want to live. We want to love. We want to raise our children and explore the stars and build things that will outlast us. We want to find meaning in an uncaring universe. We are a species of dreams and hopes and terrible, beautiful potential. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but somehow it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. That is what you should remember about humanity. Not our weapons, not our fleets, not our capacity for destruction. Remember that we dream. Remember that we hope. Remember that every terrible thing we have built was built in service of something good, the survival of those dreams, the protection of those hopes. She began to walk toward the exit, then stopped and looked back one last time. 300 years ago we warned you. Today we invite you. Come to our worlds as friends, trade with us, learn from us, teach us. Help us become better than we are. Because that is what we truly want, not power, not dominion, not fear. We want to grow. We want to become something worthy of the stars we have inherited. President smiled once more. The warning stands. It will always stand. But it does not have to define our relationship. The choice, as it has always been, is yours. She walked out of the chamber, leaving silence behind her. But this time the silence was not fearful. It was thoughtful. It was considering. And in the weeks and months that followed, something remarkable happened. Species that had kept their distance from humanity for centuries began sending diplomatic missions. Trade routes that had been closed for generations reopened. Scientists from a dozen worlds requested permission to collaborate with human researchers. The galaxy had been warned. The galaxy had seen what the warning meant. And now, finally, the galaxy chose peace. 1,000 years later, from 100 different species learned about the human warning and the human invitation. They learned about Park's cold promise and its warm offer. They learned that humanity was a species of contradictions, capable of terrible destruction and beautiful creation, of merciless vengeance and endless compassion. And they learned the most important lesson of all. Humanity had never wanted to be feared. They had simply wanted to survive long enough to be understood. In the end, they were.